Dudley Do-Right's Ripsaw Falls at Florida's Islands of Adventure. This colorful water ride is considered by many to be among the best and wettest log flumes ever constructed. But despite how damp this ride is, would you believe that it once caught fire? Well, on January 1st, 2011, that's exactly what happened at the Universal Orlando Resort. That day, a serious 2-alarm fire broke out on the ride, requiring 40 firefighters to put it out. The effectiveness of the staff and infrastructure prevented the worst-case scenario, but it was nonetheless a terrifying experience for many. Not only will we discuss this occurrence though, but we'll also talk about another incident where a woman actually broke part of her spine on the drop. But what exactly happened, and what is Ripsaw Falls anyway? Let's take a look at Dudley Do-Right's Ripsaw Falls and the 2011 fire right here on Theme Park Crazy. Today's ride is widely praised. Many would consider building attractions like this the career of a lifetime. And speaking of,
now let me ask you something. Are you where you want to be in your career? Are there times when you wake up and think, I'm capable of so much, but I feel stuck in the same position when it comes to my career? Well, the truth is that success doesn't happen overnight. Even the most successful people out there have had mentors, coaches, and people who have guided them and given them advice every step of the way. And that is where this video's sponsor, Strawberry.me, comes in. Strawberry.me is a service that sets you up with one-on-one sessions with a certified career coach. With your coach, you can discuss your goals and ambitions when it comes to your career and bounce ideas off of them. Now, I love what I do here on Theme Park Crazy, and I want to make sure I'm as productive and effective as possible when it comes to my career goals. I've been using Strawberry.me for over a year now, and my career coach and I have discussed several important ideas. These include having a backlog of video ideas I could go back to, and even getting a whiteboard so I can write down those ideas. Having a career coach to bounce ideas off of is extremely important. This is especially the case when it comes to the clarity in knowing what my goals are, the strategy in accomplishing those goals, and the accountability in making sure I take the steps needed to make those goals a reality.
With Strawberry's expert guidance, you can make sure you're taking the steps needed to take control of your career trajectory. If this is something you're interested in, scan the QR code or click on the link in the description to go to strawberry.me/themeparkcrazy to get 50% off your first coaching session. That's strawberry.me/themeparkcrazy. It's like therapy for your career. I found that Strawberry helped me gain new knowledge and insights when it comes to my career, and I'm sure that you will too.
Special thanks to Strawberry.me for sponsoring this video.
Now, for those unaware of this ride, you may have looked at the title and thought, who is Dudley Do-Right and why does he have a ride? Well, real quick, let's go into a little bit of background. First introduced in 1948, Dudley Do-Right is a famous cartoon character co-created by animator Jay Ward. Ward was notable for creating a number of famous characters in the mid-1900s. These included the famous duos Rocky and Bullwinkle and Mr. Peabody and Sherman. He also designed Captain Crunch himself. Dudley himself was most notable for starring in a segment on The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle and Friends show. Yes, that was the full title. Basically, Dudley is a polite, heroic, and clumsy Canadian Mountie. The segment centered on Dudley attempting to rescue his love interest, Nell Fenwick, from the mustache-twirling villain Snidely Whiplash. It was essentially a play on old silent film tropes, such as the classic damsel tied to the train tracks. In the 1990s, there was a renewed interest in Dudley Do-Right, with reruns being shown in syndication and a successful Rocky and Bullwinkle VHS release by Disney. These tapes included the Dudley Do-Right segments. There was even a live-action movie in 1999 starring future Academy Award winner Brendan Fraser. Perhaps non-coincidentally enough, 1999 would also see the character introduced to the theme park extended universe. Around 1991, Universal officials wanted to create a second gate for the recently opened Universal Studios Florida theme park. This planned park, named Cartoon World, would have featured lands themed to several animated properties. These included the Looney Tunes, Dr. Seuss, and the DC Comics universe. Universal also acquired the rights to the Rocky and Bullwinkle characters from Jay Ward's widow, Ramona. According to the Orlando Sentinel, Disney already owns the home video rights to Rocky and Bullwinkle cartoons and has sold more than 2 million copies since introducing them to the home market in February. Yet Ramona Ward preferred MCA to have the theme park rights because she felt Universal would give the characters better exposure than Disney, an individual close to the negotiations said. Unfortunately, while this was going on, Universal and Warner Brothers couldn't agree on a royalty percentage on the Looney Tunes or DC characters. Supposedly, Universal was offering a 6% royalty, but Warner Brothers insisted on 10% or at least 8%. According to OrlandoParkStop.com, Sid Sheinberg, who was head of Universal's parent company MCA, was adamant on a 6% offer. This was even despite the park's design team begging him to at least consider 7%. All of this supposedly led to Sheinberg telling Warner executives, quote, "We don't need your characters." Thus, the concept for Cartoon World imploded. Though the concept for Cartoon World was flushed down the proverbial toilet, the idea for a second gate was retooled into what we now know as Islands of Adventure. This was a park intended to appeal to older thrill seekers with more intense attractions than typical Orlando fare. Some of the concepts for Cartoon World were reintroduced in different ways. Seuss Landing utilized the Dr. Seuss properties, Marvel Superhero Island would take the place of the DC Comics land, and there would be a new cartoon-themed area named Toon Lagoon. Located between the Marvel Superhero Island and the Jurassic Park area, this land was dedicated to vintage cartoons. These range from newspaper comics like Kathy and Beetle Bailey to old animated cartoons like Betty Boop, Popeye the Sailor, and Dudley Do-Right. Toon Lagoon in general was a water-focused area, and according to the book Universal Orlando: The Unofficial Story, 1 million gallons of water are pumped through the land every minute. In addition to several fountains on the walking paths, it has 2 main attractions that get you absolutely soaked. The first is Popeye and Bluto's Bilge Rat Barges, a heavily themed river rapids ride. The second is the subject of this video, Dudley Do-Right's Ripsaw Falls. For Ripsaw Falls, initial concept art seemed to hint at a more natural Canadian sawmill design. Though according to an article from ThemeParkUniversity.com, it was decided that the exterior looked too similar to Splash Mountain. Therefore, it was changed to be less natural and more colorful and cartoony. The landscape represents the mountains of the Yukon. 2 standout parts of the scenery include a large tower with Dudley's hat, and a Mount Rushmore-esque facade that represented Dudley, his horse named Horse, his boss Inspector Fenwick, and his love interest Nell Fenwick. One important detail was the main material used to create the facades. According to several sources, the scenery was sculpted from a common material known as fiberglass. Basically, fiberglass is a lightweight composite material made by embedding extremely fine strands of glass into a plastic resin. It can be molded into almost any shape while remaining durable and relatively easy to maintain. Because of its versatility, fiberglass has become a staple of the themed entertainment industry. It allows designers to create convincing rockwork, buildings, and other elaborate set pieces without the immense weight or cost of constructing them from raw materials. The glass fibers themselves are non-combustible and incapable of burning. However, the plastic resin used to bind them together can melt or even catch fire under intense heat, as we will soon discover. Before we get into that, let's go over the ride experience, as there are plenty of relevant details worth discussing. The queue starts out with guests entering Snidely Whiplash's movie theater hideout. Here, you can find some humorous movie poster parodies. There's also a room with a talking bear and beaver head on the wall, played by the late great Dom DeLuise and Charles Nelson Riley, respectively. This room is meant to parody Melvin, Buck, and Max from the Country Bear Jamboree, and it certainly isn't the only Disney theme park parody on this ride. After guests make their way through the queue, they enter the ride vehicles. Like many flume rides, this attraction's boats resemble logs. Each bright red log can seat 5 people front to back. Originally, the logs had no restraint system, just bars on the lower sides to hold on to. Apparently though, due to guests attempting to exit the vehicles, lap bars were added to the logs in 2007. This makes it one of the only log rides out there to feature restraints. But who would try to exit a moving vehicle anyway? Easy, stupid people. Moving on, the ride starts out with a parody of Splash Mountain, only instead of music, the animals are creating the sound effects. Nearby, a silhouette of Snidely kidnapping Nell is seen immediately before guests turn to the first hill. On the right, Dudley is seen riding horse backwards like he does in the segment's opening. As guests ascend the first lift, they see Snidely carrying Nell off in a minecart. After reaching the top, a small dip is immediately followed by a right turn. On the right, you can see Dudley and Horse in a canoe about to drop backwards down a waterfall. Up ahead is the entrance to the Won't Ya Be Mine. Snidely is seen above the entrance, trying to crush guests with a boulder in yet another Disney parody. This time, it spoofs the old scene on the Snow White ride where the evil queen is about to crush guests with a giant diamond, or a boulder in the old Disneyland version. After entering the mine, you'll come across Dudley on the left, unaware that a bear is lunging out towards him from behind some rocks. Back outside, you'll see Snidely tying Nell to the train tracks in a parody of a Taylor Swift single cover. I'm kidding, of course, but I'm sure some viewers were about to rush over to the comment section. Horse and Inspector Fenwick are also tied to the tracks. Guests then enter a pitch-black room where Dudley can be heard saying he lost his train of thought. Then, in a parody of Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, a train light is seen overhead before the vehicle descends a dry drop. It then crests a hill and splashes down. The sawmill is up next, with Dudley and Horse stuck in a log above. Inside a shack, Nell is seen tied to a log on the left, with the log slowly traveling towards a buzzsaw on a conveyor belt. On the right, Dudley and Snidely are fighting over the lever that controls the conveyor belt. This is followed by yet another splashdown drop that takes guests to ground level. At this point, first-time riders may think the ride is about to end, but after a relatively chill flume section, one more lift hill takes guests to the highest point. On the left, Dudley has somehow no clip through the floor. Horse, meanwhile, is drinking the water and is probably about to start calling himself the Lizard Queen. At the top of the lift, there's a shootout going on in Snidely's lair, with the characters hiding in barrels and boxes with holes in them. After Nell fires Snidely from a cannon, Dudley accidentally puts his foot on a detonator, causing a massive cartoon explosion in the lair. The word boom appears overhead, and what follows is a 50-degree drop under an exploding shack effect, which also sprays guests with water. This double-down drop includes a brief upward crest before the final splashdown. This section is followed by one where guests on a nearby pathway can insert coins to spray water at passengers on board. Admittedly, this is just as much fun for adults as it is for kids. The last segment of the ride shows Snidely locked up in Lollapalooza Island prison. Yes, that's the name of it. In one last Disney parody, he is seen trying to get a beaver to hand over the keys to his cell. This is just like the dog on Pirates of the Caribbean. Following this, an award ceremony is held for Dudley and Horse before guests disembark on the exit platform. Going back to the drop, here's an interesting fact about this part. Have you ever wondered why the final drop splits into two separate track sections? Well, apparently, the ride's early design would have involved a unique vehicle system. At some point, a buzzsaw would appear to saw the vehicles in two. In actuality, this would have been made possible with two ride vehicles connected side by side. It probably would have involved electromagnets, though I'm not 100% sure. Either way, while this concept wasn't used on the ride, it did get pretty far into development. Not only does the final drop split in two, but there are also two separate unloading stations at the end, which would have preserved the illusion that the log was split in half, only for the halves to reattach before the main boarding station. There are two more things worth noting about the drop, and one of which involves another incident completely separate from the upcoming fire. The ride system was built by German manufacturer Mach Rides, a respected name in the roller coaster industry. Though it's not listed on RCDB, the ride is classified as an aqua coaster. Before the descent, a wheel assembly under the log locks onto a set of 3 rails. This allows for a much steeper, faster, and more intense drop than on an ordinary log flume. Second, there's the angle of the drop. When the ride first opened, the drop started off at a 45-degree angle before suddenly shifting to 50 degrees partway down. This change in angle apparently gave riders a noticeable pop of airtime. The problem was that at the bottom of the drop, guests would often land back in their seats with a pretty hard thud. This led to an incident in the year 2000 that was reported to and verified by ThemeParkInsider.com. According to an anonymous user, a 40-year-old woman was injured on the last drop when she was propelled out of the seat and slammed back down hard. The ride was actually stopped for a few hours and she was taken off the ride by paramedics. She sustained a fractured tailbone, herniated cervical discs, and other injuries. There were also other unconfirmed reports of injuries on the drop. One report claims that a 59-year-old woman suffered an L1 compression spinal fracture due to the hard landing. And there are even more complaints on the website. Yes, the bottom of the drop was by far the most common source of rider complaints. Because of these complaints, the drop was modified to be a constant 50-degree angle rather than having a change from 45 to 50. And if you look closely, you can actually see the outline of the original drop. But with the incident involving the drop out of the way, let's get to the more inflammatory one. On New Year's Day 2011, Dudley Do-Right's Ripsaw Falls was operating normally. Shout out to Coaster College. This ride was said to be fully loaded with guests and it was about 75 degrees outside. Around 5 p.m., a large plume of black smoke was seen coming from the roof of Ripsaw Falls. Somehow, a 2-alarm fire had broken out on the ride building. Guests were immediately evacuated from the attraction, as well as the entire Toon Lagoon area. Officials also dialed 911.
Got some sort of fire on one of the attractions.
Is everyone evacuated from it?
Yeah, we're in the process of doing that now.
One guest on the ground was able to catch video of the active flames consuming the ride facade. Another video shows the Incredible Hulk roller coaster still operating with the smoke visible in the background. The video also shows one guest claiming he was just on the ride and smelled smoke, hinting that the fire had been smoldering unbeknownst to the staff.
I was just on that! Oh my god! You hear like an explosion or something? No, when I got on, it smelled like smoke. We were just on that. Pero it got wet, and I didn't think it was fire.
Meanwhile, park guest Claudia Mejia told Central Florida News 13 that she was waiting in line for another attraction when she saw the smoke. She said, quote, "They evacuated us from the ride and people were a little nervous. We were asking what was going on and they said they couldn't tell us but that we would see ahead." Several guests described the smoke as smelling like burning rubber or plastic. This was likely the scent of the plastic resin in the fiberglass melting and burning. The burning plastic also explains why the smoke was so black. When a material like plastic catches fire, it goes through what's called an incomplete combustion. This happens when there isn't enough oxygen available for the material to burn completely. Instead of being converted entirely into carbon dioxide and water vapor, the burning plastic breaks down into a mixture of partially burned compounds and carbon particles known as soot. Thankfully, despite how horrifying the fire looked and reports of people panicking, the situation was handled flawlessly by the ride operators. Every single passenger was successfully evacuated from the fully loaded ride. Some riders did complain of smoke inhalation and sought medical attention from the park's first aid area, but nobody was hospitalized and nobody was seriously injured. Best of all, there were no fatalities. The speed at which the whole ride was evacuated is especially impressive considering the evacuation process. At this point, the ride had lap bars, which kept people in their seats. However, they also prevented people from panicking and trying to climb out of the logs by themselves. This could have put them in even more danger. Guests had to wait for ride operators to manually unlock the restraints with a special tool before they could safely exit and be escorted away from the attraction. Despite this extra step, Universal staff managed to clear the ride quickly and get everybody out. You've got to give credit to every single person who was working the attraction that day. The fire took about half an hour to be tamed, and it also took around 40 firefighters to do so. According to reports, they had to use a ladder truck to reach the blaze with the hose. By the end of the day, the incident was all over the news. Thankfully, the lack of fatalities or severe injuries didn't make it a top story. Orlando Fire Department Deputy Chief Greg Hoggett told the press, quote, "We want to compliment Universal on doing everything they were supposed to do. When the alarm sounded, they evacuated the ride. They got people out of the area. As the fire progressed, they got us in here, escorted us in here, they blocked off the area. Nobody at the rest of the park was in jeopardy in any way. Naturally, the ride was closed down to assess and repair the damages." As it turned out, the attraction was about to undergo a scheduled refurbishment anyway, so all officials had to do was push the refurbishment up a bit. At this point, people were surely wondering what caused the fire and where exactly it started. Helicopter footage revealed the fire started in the turnaround after the first hill, the exact area with Dudley and Horse in the canoe being tarped off. You can see serious burn marks on the trough, and you could see a hole burned out in the roof. According to Universal Orlando spokesperson Tom Schroeder, the smoke was spotted in an area, what I would call the ride path, in an area where one of the ride vehicles travels. It wasn't inside the main area, it was sort of where one of the ride vehicles goes. As for what caused the fire, Hoggett stated that the investigators were looking into a possible electrical problem caused by either the air conditioners or the ride controller. Due to the extent of the damage though, investigators were unable to determine the exact cause of the fire. All the Orlando Fire Department was able to determine was that the fire appeared to be accidental, so arson was ruled out. But here's where things get especially interesting. On March 3, 2011, Ripsaw Falls reopened after an extensive refurbishment and repair. According to the Orlando Sentinel, Universal had claimed they found the cause of the fire. However, officials declined to publicly state what the cause was or what exactly happened during the maintenance period. Now, while it may seem counterproductive to not disclose the cause of a serious fire, this is actually standard operating procedure for theme parks. When an incident doesn't involve serious injury or death, there's no formal mandate to demand a more extensive investigation or a public report. Also, theme parks often avoid disclosing specifics with these kinds of incidents for insurance reasons. Think about it this way, if Universal was to publicly admit fault to a fire that damaged one of their rides, their insurance provider could refuse to cover the damage and leave the park on the hook for the repair bill. Also, admitting fault would open the door for several guests to make claims of emotional distress or long-term health effects from smoke inhalation. For Universal, it made much more sense to simply take the steps needed to reopen the ride and let the incident fade from the headlines. Whether you agree or disagree with this approach, this is standard for a major company, especially when there were no injuries or fatalities. With all of that said, I was still curious what caused the fire, and I wanted to get some kind of answer even if it wasn't an official one. Now, this is all speculation, and I have no idea what happened behind the scenes. But I think the best hypothesis came from, believe it or not, my own father. Yes, my father is actually an HVAC expert and regularly works on heating and air conditioning systems. A while back, I asked him about what could have caused this fire. What he said was that an air conditioning unit can absolutely cause a fire. The first thing I thought was, well, maybe the fan could have stopped operating, stopping the system from blowing out hot air and causing it to overheat. My father, however, said no, and that the unit would have just shut off on its own. He also said that wires don't typically wear out on their own. So what was his theory? Well, it was mice. Yes, mice. He told me that he's seen several instances of mice building nests inside of air conditioning units. Mice not only make nests out of flammable paper, cardboard, and anything else they could find, but they also nibble on wires, wearing them down. The electricity arcing from these wires could easily cause the nest materials to combust, acting as a tinder to spark an even bigger fire. Sometimes, the mouse itself can be the ignition source by biting down on a wire and electrocuting itself. I asked him how mice can get all the way up to a unit on the roof, and he said that mice can simply get anywhere. Now, I can't say for certain if this theory is true, but I have to say, it sounds pretty good, and it's about as good as we're gonna get. It is a pretty hilarious thought. After all of the times the ride poked fun at the mouse house, a mouse itself would cause the damage. Either way, Dudley Do-Right's Ripsaw Falls continues to operate today with no other fires. There was a fire on Popeye and Bluto's Build-Drat barges, but that's a story for another day. Now, admittedly, I'm no expert when it comes to behind-the-scenes fires, but I'd love to hear what insights you have to share. If you were at the park that day, used to work for Universal, or have any other theories you'd like to share, I'd love to hear them in the comments. So feel free to drop a response down below. And speaking of comments, now it's time for the comment shoutout program. This is where I take 5 random comments from my previous video and read them out. These comments come from my video on chaos at Opryland. Irish Lad the First 4722 says, almost giving me Doctor Who vibes with the space and time. Channel Catfish 7862 says, Silver Dollar City's Fire in the Hole would be a good video. It's a great dark ride and is connected to Southwest Missouri culture and history. Plus looked scary as the original was dying. OMG It's Here says, I miss Opryland. Sure, we have what's now Dollywood in Tennessee, but it's not the same. Illinois 9431 says, that mullet in the arcade is on another level. And Z-Man IZ says, I genuinely wonder what the original Leslie looked like. I'm hoping an image of it surfaces one day. Sounded really cool. If you want to see your words in my next video, leave a comment down below and it may be selected. Please note though that inflammatory or spam comments will not be read. Also, here's a special shout out to my newest Patreon supporter, Coastal Thrills. Feel free to check out my Patreon in the description for exclusive archive video content. Thanks for watching everyone. Feel free to like, share, and subscribe. You can follow me on social media on Instagram and Facebook, or you can check out my website at themeparkcrazy.com.
And I'm on TikTok.
This is Theme Park Crazy, and I'll see you all next time.